produce new material. Yet he had not sent a single page. In his room, Matthew was utterly frustrated. He could not write a good novel because, deep down, he knew he lacked the natural talent. To make matters worse, his royalties were now being withheld by the publisher because he had not fulfilled his contract to produce a new novel. The contract stipulated at least 2 novels per author for royalties to continue indefinitely. Then Stanislaus, or in short, Stan, Ellen, and Helen's slightly arrogant godson, came to visit and met Matthew. They had a few drinks. From his demeanor, it was clear Stan had a crush on Alice and was not happy about Matthew being her boyfriend. The next day, Matthew still struggled with what to write. He revisited his first rejected novel, Someone from Behind, and gave it to Alice for her review. He didn't tell her it was his own work, instead claiming the publisher had sent it to him for review and, feigning busyness, asked Alice to read it to gauge her reaction. Shortly after, Stan arrived and chatted with Matthew. Stan boasted about his extensive knowledge of Algeria, where his father had served, and expressed his awe that Matthew, despite never having been there, could write such a detailed and atmospheric account of the war in Black Sand. However, Stan consistently sought weaknesses to corner Matthew, even remarking that Alice's standards for an ideal man were very high, which made Matthew uncomfortable. That evening, Alice told Matthew that the writing he'd given her was terrible. She couldn't even finish it because it was so uninteresting, and she was certain no publisher would accept such a novel. Matthew silently seethed, disappointed with himself. Days passed. At breakfast, Matthew received a call from the bank. His credit card had exceeded its limit, and they demanded immediate payment. Matthew panicked. His account was empty because his royalties were withheld due to breaching his contract with the publisher. He couldn't write another novel as good as Black Sand, which only added to his stress and self-doubt. Desperate, he faked an accident and went to the hospital, claiming he had been attacked by robbers. This was a lie to prevent Alice and her family from realizing he was actually stressed and self-harming himself. Meanwhile, Stan seemed to sense something suspicious about Matthew. Back home, the publisher relentlessly hounded Matthew for the new novel manuscript, but Matthew only offered empty promises. He hadn't even written a single paragraph. On the other hand, Alain, Alice's father, seemed worried about his future son-in-law. He informed Matthew that a letter for him had arrived. When Matthew opened it, he found a photograph of Leon, the diary's owner, who Matthew believed was dead. Time passed. Matthew visited a bookstore with Alice for a fan signing event. Suddenly, a man approached, claiming to be a friend of Leon and saying that Matthew had misused a dead man's diary. The man, identified as Arnaud, demanded $500 million as hush money, threatening to expose to the public that Black Sand was not Matthew's original work. The next day, Arnaud called, demanding the money. Matthew asked for time, explaining that his account was empty. Arnaud then revealed he knew Alice and her family were hanging out in the yard, implying he had been spying on their house. Matthew, cornered, promised to give Arnaud a very expensive pistol from Alain's collection. Unbeknownst to Matthew, Stan was standing behind him, overhearing the conversation about the pistol. Later that night, it was time for Matthew to steal that collector's pistol. He used Alain's golf glove and broke a window to make it look like a burglary. The next morning, the police finished investigating the supposed break-in at Alain's house. Matthew and Alice suggested installing an alarm system. Meanwhile, Stan, suspicious of Matthew's conversation from the day before, bravely ventured to search Matthew's room. At the same time, Alice and her father went for a walk on the beach for some fresh air, with Matthew opting not to join them. Back in Matthew's room, Stan discovered a wooden book box. At the same time, Matthew walked in and found Stan holding the pistol he had hidden. Stan immediately attacked Matthew, declaring that he would never have Alice. In a desperate struggle, Matthew hit Stan on the head with the pistol. Tragically, Stan died from that head wound, leaving Matthew bewildered. His intention was never to kill. Moments later, Alice's voice echoed from a distance, prompting Matthew to quickly hide Stan's body in the closet, along with his belongings. As he cleaned himself, Matthew noticed Stan's scratch marks on his neck, which he then covered with a collared shirt. Soon Elaine and Alice arrived, wondering why Stan had left so abruptly without saying goodbye. Alice tried to call him, which made Matthew panic. He quickly silenced Stan's phone and sent a text message to Alice, claiming Stan had left due to an urgent matter. That evening, they all had dinner together when suddenly something dripped from the ceiling onto the dining table. Matthew immediately feared it was blood from Stan seeping through, but it turned out to be only his own fear. The liquid was actually blood from his nosebleed. Alice tried to help him, but Matthew refused and left the table, rushing to check the closet. To his relief, there was no red liquid leaking or pooling on the floor.